In this episode of the Exploring Information Security Podcast, we're exploring the Cambodia scam compounds.
Computers now have primary control of critical functions.
Houston, recommend vector transfer.
Your go for APU shutdown on time.
Roger, go for deploy.
Nice to be in orbit.
Welcome to the Exploring Information Security Podcast, where you will learn, explore, and grow your security mindset. I am your host, Timothy D. Block, and in this episode, we will be exploring Cambodia scam compounds. With me to do that is Scott Augenbaum, a former FBI agent who spent years dealing with transnational organized criminal enterprises. Today, he focuses on cybercrime prevention, translating his extensive experience into approachable, human-centric advice to help everyday people take practical steps to protect themselves. He's written a book, The Secret of Cybersecurity. Show notes can be found at exploresec.com/EIS. Feedback for the show, timothy.dblock@exploresec.com. You can also hit me up on LinkedIn or rate the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. We are starting to try to build out a community for ExploreSec. So we have a Discord channel and a listserv on Google Groups. So you can go to community on exploresec.com. Click on the tab there, and that's where you can go to sign up. You can also exploresec.com/community. So this was a good one. It's very timely. I try to create timeless content, but this one is timely because I just listened to a podcast, Risky Business, talk about scam compounds in Cambodia. This is something I've been hearing about since like August when Aaron West, you'll hear me try to figure out her name during the podcast, but it was Aaron West at the SAN Cybersecurity Awareness Conference. Talk about pig butchering, what it is, kind of detail some of these scam compounds. So it's good that we're seeing some more awareness around that stuff because that forces these countries to do stuff. And this is kind of a humanitarian effort, not just necessarily a cybersecurity one. You hear us kind of talk about both sides of it, right? People are getting scammed out of this. It's some really gnarly stuff. So this is a really good topic to dive into at this point in time, and again, help kind of spread some awareness to people who might not be aware of it. So this is something that's definitely more than just cybersecurity professionals. It's for people, outside of the cybersecurity space. So with that, let's just go ahead and get into it. I started by asking Scott how the trip got started.
Well, and it's kind of funny, and I always go back to manifesting things. As I was sitting here last year, towards the end of the year, saying, I just want to focus on keeping 1 million people safe and putting my passion in front of profit. And the next thing I know, I get a call from the State Department that were like, hey, can you come out to Cambodia to do a bunch of presentations to local law enforcement, academia, attorneys, telecommunication, about cybercrime prevention. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'd love to do that. And then like, can you go to a conference? And then the next thing I know, and this is about Thanksgiving, I go online and I find out that Cambodia is the online scam capital of the world. And I just said, man, I must have been sleeping or having too many bourbons with you guys, because I'm like, I didn't really know. I knew there was some stuff in Southeast Asia, but I didn't know how bad it was. Because for whatever reason, Tim, that wasn't being covered. I don't know in your circles and what you read, if you were seeing that about 3 months ago.
So I did go to the SAN Security Awareness Conference, and I'll have to see if I can find her name, because she did a really great presentation on this exact topic, and that kind of is what opened my eyes to it. Is that the Southeast Asian? They showed the compounds, and she was that was a lot of her job was trying to bring awareness to it. And she had gone on site to the one of the ones that was taken down and just took pictures from inside and other stuff. I'll have to find her name. But so I went to SANS and I just found out in August. So I wasn't too much.
Well, I was dealing with it probably 2 or 3 years ago when the evolution of the pig butchering, I started getting victims in 2003 where I started seeing significant financial losses coming out of these cryptocurrency romance scams. And you just started hearing that these are being run out of Southeast Asia in a part of the world called Myanmar, which used to be Burma. So I'm like, okay, so I'm very, very familiar with Southeast Asian organized crime, not an expert. So they call me, and then all of a sudden, when I go out there, I'm in the capital, I get flown into Phnom Penh. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. The first thing that really struck me very unusual, and this is all going to tie in, is I fly into the airport in Cambodia, and I realized that it's the most beautiful airport I've ever seen in my life. And I traveled to quite a few places, but I've never seen anything that looked so immaculate when I got there. And then I drove to the airport and kind of went through Cambodia. And I'm like, okay, this is what I thought Cambodia was all about. So I get out there and I'm doing a couple of days worth of presentations in the capital with the State Department, really playing in my role as a cybercrime prevention trainer, doing presentations. And then, we're talking a little bit about the scam compounds and stuff. And then I meet with my FBI legal attaché, because the FBI has legal attachés at all of the embassies around the United States. And then there are assistant legal attachés. And me and her we knew people in common, so we just hit it off. And we were going out to this place called Sihanoukville, which is on the water, beautiful beaches, and all of these casinos. And she said, this is where you're going to start to feel really overwhelmed. Because when I started reading and doing my research, getting ready, Sihanoukville is the ground zero of these scam compounds. And people and they're right there in plain sight. I think I sent you a couple of photos of it. Some look like beautiful casinos. Others look like worn down apartment buildings. Others were compounds with the back of the building was facing the street. But the big thing for me that I had to do some research and talk to people is, how the heck did we get into this position? How the heck did scam compounds pop up in Cambodia?
Well, and so that's the question, because you went over there to talk to local authorities about cybersecurity, cybercrime, things like that. Are they just not aware of it, or they are aware of it, or I guess what's the dynamics? They have to be aware of it at some level, right?
Let's just say everybody's aware of it. But why is it this way? And this is what I've found out, and I put some pieces together, and they were all happening right in front of us. But, it's a big world. We don't really pay attention to these types of things. In 2018, China made online gambling illegal. And I think gambling itself was. So Chinese business people with lots of money went to Cambodia and started building casinos. And, Cambodia is kind of an emerging nation. So I just imagine like the economic expansion and opportunity for a third world country when foreign investment comes in and starts building casinos, starts hiring local labor, starts hiring purchasing materials, and really starts boosting up the economy, because now you have people flying in from all over Asia to go gambling at this one destination. So everything's good until 2020. And then COVID happens and it shuts down all the casinos because they took it really seriously. So the investment money that was coming in was coming through organized crime, Chinese organized crime. And what's the goal of organized crime, Tim?
Yeah, to make money. Yeah.
Make money. And if you're not going to make money through gambling, you're going to make money through the old-fashioned way, scamming. So that is when we started to see all of the pig butchering scams starting to take place. And the people who were coming in from outside of the area were working, in these scam centers. But we started seeing things starting to speed up, and now they needed labor. So they started advertising for people to come to Cambodia for these jobs in call centers, these jobs in casinos. So people came from all around the world in these underdeveloped nations to be part of this economic boom, because these people weren't making a lot of money. There's many places in the world where you're not making more than $200, $300 a month. And these jobs were promising $1,000 a month. So people were coming through. And then the next thing you know, we had this giant explosion of scam centers, human trafficking, which has become a humanitarian crisis. But in my opinion, and I hate to say it on what I focus on, a whole bigger humanitarian crisis, which are victims in the United States losing money to a very well-oiled, organized crime group that's better than anything I've ever seen from my days in the FBI.
Well, and I don't want to lose either the point about, like you said, people coming to these jobs, because as I know about this and read about this is, people would come to these jobs and then they'd have like their passports taken from them. And then they'd be put in these compounds where they're pretty much slaves, or, I don't know if there's a better term for it, but they're kind of locked in with the promise of getting out eventually. But I don't think a lot of them really do get out unless law enforcement comes in and breaks up the compound.
And then you're interviewing all of these victims who eventually snuck out or who were freed and all of that stuff. So let's continue with this snowball of a crisis over here. So all of a sudden, and here's my big thing, all these years that I've dealt with transnational organized criminal enterprises from my time with the FBI, there were two groups. There was organized crime and there was nation states. And when the Nigerians got into the business, probably in 2005, 2006, with emails, they were loosely organized. They didn't have their crap together. But these places do have their crap together. This is a living, breathing ecosystem. And from what I'm able to see, it's funded by organized crime, which is Chinese. And there is no Chinese organized crime without the government allowing it to be. So you have this massive machine over here. You have a lot of investment from the Chinese government, because that's who built the airport in China. Or China has their own little thing. China lends you lots and lots of money. And China built a highway from Phnom Penh to Sihanoukville. It used to take 5 hours. Now it takes 2.5 hours. Unbelievable highway with great Huawei routers all over the place for my AT&T signal to ride on. And I was able to get internet connectivity the whole entire trip. Let me ask you, when you drive from here to Memphis, can you get internet connectivity on I-40 without ever losing a call?
I can, yeah.
Come on, nobody can. Everyone can lose a call.
I'm not on the phone a whole lot, to be honest, but yeah.
No, but
I know what you're saying, going through the mountains and stuff. Yeah.
I'm like, holy crap. I'm like, what is going on here? We have this third world country. We have Chinese investment. We have the FBI is over there. We have law enforcement is there. We have potential internal politics that there's many allegations that there's ties to corruption, and no one ever really wants to say that. So now we have a perfect storm. We have $15 billion of reported pig butchering, scams, victims all over the world. No, this is just in the United States. we do not have a treaty with Cambodia, even though we got good relationships with them. So it starts making things really, really challenging. And here I am going out and talking to the people, wanting to scream, going, hey guys, you got scam compounds in your area. Does anyone give a crap?
Well, again, going back to it's all about the money, right? As you said it, they're having those compounds there bring in, money into the local authorities, or they're getting kickbacks or whatever behind the scenes, right?
Mm-hmm. So I'm going out, I'm interviewing, I'm doing training, half-day workshops at the Cambodia Police Academy, the Ministry of the Interior, which is the state police, and the local police department that's in the scam compound area, where they're not taking calls from people trying to escape. And one of the officers, through the translator, when I was telling the story of pig butchering, and this is something that, you have to really be able to pivot on your feet. I'm telling the story and he interrupts me and he says, it's just what I thought. All the victims from the United States are just plain greedy, because this guy thought he was going to make all this money on cryptocurrency, and you could just see the complete lack of empathy.
Yeah, that's wild. I do want to take a step back to pig butchering and what that is real quick, because I always thought them as like romance scams. There was something that came out, I think last year or the year before, about pig butchering being kind of, I don't know, a negative term or negative connotation, but can you kind of just explain kind of what pig butchering is and like why it's called pig butchering?
Yeah, it's really nothing more than an advanced fee scheme that's tied to romance and cryptocurrency, where you are tricking, in the most basic terms, you're tricking a victim into sending money to you, but you're not, with the ultimate goal, and the way they call it pig butchering is to fatten the victim, as to get as much out of the victim until you kill it. So when I dealt with the largest pig butchering victim I dealt with was $5.2 million. And you say, how can anybody give $5.2 million? And I told this story, and he meets someone on LinkedIn who pretends to be an Asian female who has ties to investing knowledge, and says, hey, do you want to invest in cryptocurrency? Now they change it to spot gold trading because cryptocurrency sounds bad. Spot gold trading sounds better. There's a magical algorithm. You can make lots of money. Just go to the Google store or the App Store, download the simulated trading app. So the victim goes there, sees all these positive reviews. He downloads the app. And now there's $10,000 of play money in the app. They go through the black box trading, which means, okay, at 12 o'clock, we're going to do a cycle. And at 12:01, that $10,000 turns into $39,000. And he's like, wow. And then that turns into $160,000. And then the bad guy sets the hook and says, do you want to invest $100 of your own money? And what do you think the victim says when they see how much money they make in play money?
Oh, yeah. They're totally.
They go, okay. So they either instruct them how to open up a crypto wallet, which they share with the bad guy. And remember, they wire transfer money out of their account. They put it into a crypto account that's controlled by the bad guy. But the bad guy shows them on the app, and the app looks like, your Charles Schwab app, and it's all BS. And it says you have this much money. So they kept asking him for more and more money. When I got involved, it's because of someone I knew called me, said, hey, this guy wants $250,000. And I said, let me guess, he needs to pay fees on a crypto investment. He goes, how'd you know? I go, that's the game. When I talked to the guy and I said, what do you need $250 for? He says, I need to pay fees. I go, how much did you believe which was in your account? He said, $350 million. And he believed 350. That's why he needed to borrow all that money. He thought he was going to get it. And that's when I asked him how much money did he put in, and he said 5.2 million. And it goes to the truths I talk about with cybersecurity. It talks about you're not getting your money back. Nobody's going to jail, but this could have been prevented. So these organized criminal groups are figuring out a way today to not be technical, not have technical experience, not attack organizations on their infrastructure, but to go after end users. And they are so well organized today that the scams just keep getting worse and worse.
I mean, this just sounds like the skeleton of you've already mentioned the Nigerian, the Nigerian print scam, which everybody knows about, right? But it's just evolved and changed into, crypto scams, and just give a little bit. It's not even asking for a lot of money. It's just giving a little bit, and then over time, you look and you've lost $5.2 million.
Scams have been around since the beginning of time. Organized crime has been around since the beginning of time. Now they're just able to do it to scale. And it's so well organized. And the thing that kind of concerns me now is now through the use of artificial intelligence, they're able to perfect this scamming so much better than ever. And it's broken down. People have different roles within these organizations, but it still costs money. Remember, organized crime is return on investment. You still have to house people. You still have to run electricity. You might have to even run air conditioning to cool things. You got to feed people, even if it's only rice. Think about what happens when you spin up your first in the cloud artificial intelligence scam center that only needs to be run by one person. I mean, it is pretty scary, but the whole thing that I talk about is, listen, almost all these pig butchering scams could be prevented. So do we wait for the government to do more? Do we wait for the United Nations to, finally get their act together? Or, do we fund more of this? And, my FBI family over in Cambodia, they're invited guests. They don't have arrest powers. They don't have subpoena powers. The U.S. government is trying to balance out the chessboard between us and the Chinese government. Who's really the bad guy, the good guy here? Who's the bad guy? The Cambodians are like, listen, Chinese gave us money for an airport. Hey, Chinese have built us infrastructure. Chinese stuff is coming into our ports. Cambodians don't want to piss the Chinese off. So that's why here, this is so much deeper than a law enforcement problem.
Yeah, and kind of want to dive into the law enforcement, because I've been reading about some of these scam compound takedowns, and I even think I recently read about how China has arrested some of these organized crime leaders, but how much of that is actually them doing something, or is it more just theater?
Well, it could be compared to this. Let's just say the DEA has a killer year, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and they bust, the largest fentanyl ring in the United States. Is that going to make a dent on the fentanyl trade? Probably not. So it's just and you can't tell what's real and because it's all about the money. And, there's so many people raising awareness and raising issues and talking about this and talking about the humanitarian crisis, which I am going to say absolutely there's a humanitarian crisis here. Because as we have people are being freed or sneaking out of the compounds. When I was staying at the hotel in Sihanoukville, there were a bunch of workers who were freed, who were from one of the compounds that was raided. They were waiting to go back. So now, anytime a compound is raided, everyone there says, we're all being held against our will. When I talked to the State Department about this, because I got word that there was an individual from Africa who escaped, was an American, State Department doesn't get involved. If he gets caught by the Cambodian immigration are going to say, you're an overstay, or you're one of those scammers. So now it has just made an issue so complex.
Yeah. So, I guess we could talk a little bit about like the actual compounds, like what you saw from the outside and kind of your feelings around some of that stuff. Because I mean, I've read some of the stuff, and you put a great video up of you driving by one of the compounds, and what stuck out to me was just all the air conditioning units on the outside, and like you said, there was no, like, all the windows are barred, there's no front entrance, no doors.
Nobody has central air, so having air conditioners on the backside is not a big deal. Having a building with the backside facing the street is a big deal. Yeah. Because that's so there's no doors and it's built in a compound type situation here, like a castle, and you heard me talking to the guy, I'm like, that's where they go in and nobody goes out. And when you start talking to the local people in Cambodia, you have to remember 50 years ago, they had a brutal genocide with the Khmer Rouge, which is something that we didn't really learn about a lot. But, my guide was telling me that his father was taken when he was 6 years old and killed. So you have a generation of people there who have suffered so immensely. Nobody wants to speak out against the government because it's a monarchy. Okay, so you have these people that the local people are like, what are they complaining about? That they have to work, 15 hours a day. If you would see the different level of poverty that exists in that part of the world. It's just, Tim, I came out of there and I was completely overwhelmed going, I don't even know what to think. But you want to know what I did learn out of this? It really makes what my passion is and my interest in is that people have to realize that scams are occurring. They're occurring by people who are not stopping, people who will not, and who the government cannot stop either. But we can prevent it.
Well, so how do we do that? Like, what should people be on the lookout for some of these scams?
It's just the awareness. It's the whole entire awareness aspect. And it's the fact that people it's just not a priority. It's just kind of the way that, when somebody comes to me and says, you better not eat sliced turkey, you're going to get really sick. It's made with nitrates. And I'm like, okay. That, unfortunately, is the same way I think when I talk to people about cybersecurity, or at least 99% of the population. It's just like, and all you can do is help those who want to help themselves. I mean, nothing could be more demoralizing or more than sitting here and trying to educate a population that doesn't want to be educated.
Yeah, I think you and I were having that conversation around like kind of fitness stuff, right? Everyone knows you should go work out, you should get some exercise, but a lot of people just don't do it. Eat right, maybe get a salad instead of a burger every once in a while.
And even when you do all that, you get older, you get to my age, it's like I feel like all I do is eat thin gluten-free bread and work out 2 hours a day, and I still can't lose a pound,
Yeah. Yep.
You know, and it's just kind of one of these things where it's like, listen, you have to double down on, listen, as I say all the time, look, I deal with large organizations. They come to me, they check a box, you know, hey, can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? Do they really care? I don't know. But, you know, to sit here and to do podcasts and to, you know, write books and to really become active on LinkedIn, spreading the message, that's all I can do.
Yeah, no, I agree. One of the things that I'm more and more coming around to, right, and going back to advice, is we could probably give out 100 or probably more, thousands pieces of advice about how you can remain secure. What is, like, to you, like, the one security tip, if you had to give somebody, what would it be? You only get one.
It's a combination, you know, and I want you to look at this through the lens of your job of security awareness. People don't understand social engineering. It's that simple. They don't understand the 10 different types of social engineering and the different scams that exist, because everyone thinks I just bought an email tool and it's going to save me. Okay? It's just that simple. And we're talking very basic level here. So that's number one. Social engineering, the combination of artificial intelligence. Nobody's up to speed on that. And most people feel they need to be up to speed on that as much as I need to be up to speed on understanding nitrates and cold cut turkey. Okay? Like, all right. The next thing that we need to realize is all it takes is an account compromise. That's it. A stolen username and password is all it takes to ruin your life. So do you know what your mission critical accounts are? Have you set up two-factor authentication? And this is how I can tell. I can walk into any conference and I can sit here and go, do you have two-factor authentication on your AT&T for your home router, your Verizon for your cell phone, iCloud account, and your Gmail account? Do you have all four? And very rarely do I come across anybody, and I'm not counting the 0.01% of information security people. You know, nobody has that done at all. And nobody has separate passwords in that group and just putting two-factor authentication on. If you would just do that, and then I would say, even if you did that, I guarantee you your family members aren't doing that. That little concept over here that I could explain in 30 seconds probably leads to a majority of the cybercrime victimizations. Because just think about it. Most things are social engineering, right? So either if they're not going to trick you to give up your money, they're going to steal your password to get your money. That's it. That's what I see everything's about.
Yep. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, because I've argued that security tooling has gotten better, and you're starting to see the rise of these different groups that are doing just focusing on social engineering, like the Lapsus Shiny Hunter group or whatever. That's just, you know, calling places and getting access to stuff they shouldn't have access to.
It's not even that. We still have an adversary that we have all the tools available. You don't have to be a hacker anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You have to have skill set. You know, you can just sit here and, you know, you can protect the network all the time as much as you want. You know, you could send all your security people to every SANS class as humanly possible. And I've argued that for 15 years. We don't need to make information security people smarter. They already know what to do. We need to get the end users up to taking it seriously.
Yep. No, I absolutely agree. That's why I got into the field of, or focused more on security awareness, right? Because, you know, humans are the most complicated computer system on the planet, not the computers, because it's all down to ones and zeros at the end of the day there. But humans, because everyone's unique, everyone, falls for some of the same stuff, but, everyone's got a bit different of
But nobody
interest.
will really do it much about it until it's too late. It's not a budget issue. You want to know when it's a budget issue? You want to know I just picked up 3 clients on the same thing me and you talked about a while ago? They all have breaches. And now they have to go back and just think about this. They have to go back because there's OCR requirements and they have to show a mitigation strategy. And you know what's not a mitigation strategy? We just bought a new cybersecurity awareness platform. That's not a mitigation strategy. So now it's like I deal with people who want to buy the cancer drug after they had cancer. They don't want to buy it before because, that's too much work.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was getting to. Is the human element is hard, right? Because people are complicated, and not everybody's going to listen to the advice. People are still going to fall for it.
And let's just think about this. I get calls all the time. I got this other healthcare company. Just they just settled maybe $25-50 million on a class action lawsuit. They'll pay whatever I ask them to pay. I don't lose any sleep over that. Who cares? I'm going to go fund my kids' college tuition this year based on that one little gig. But it breaks my heart when I'm dealing with someone who lost a month's salary or 2 months or 6 months worth of salary or maybe a life savings. That's what really bothers me. And that's what these organized crime groups are going after.
Yeah, I think seniors are kind of the easy target, with a lot of, like you're talking about, retirement funds available to them. And honestly, they're probably sitting around waiting for family members to call. And so, when you talk about like romance scams or someone just reaching out, that's why they're willing to give up that money, right? Is for some sort of human connection.
Yeah. So the bottom line is I was overwhelmed. I came out there. I offered to do more of these. The State Department wants me to do more of these. I was like, yeah, sounds fun. I love seeing different parts of the world, meeting different people. It helps me spread my message better. It helps me focus on what I like to do.
Cool. Well, is there anything you'd like to plug?
For anyone who is listening to this, you can put my email in. And if they want, I'm plugging my book, but I'll give them a copy of my book. I don't sell I include my book on my overpriced speaking engagements, but I will give them the audio copy of my book. And every once in a while, I'm able to trick some companies into buying my book. But usually, I recorded the audio. I have it on a platform and the e-copy. So for all of your listeners, Tim, I would love for them to get in touch with me. And I will give them access to my book, The Secret to Cybersecurity. If you're looking to read a good book by an FBI agent who's really technical and who has saved the day on many occasions, I'm not your guy. Convince Victor Rodriguez to write a book. Maybe he'll be your guy, but I'm not your guy. I'm not the hero in the story, Tim. I didn't save anything. I just learned a lot while I was with the FBI. And I thought, and this is what I do with my life now. I've taken what I've learned and I try to make it very, very approachable in human fashion. So basic everyday people can take steps to protect themselves.
Awesome. Well, I love it. Well, Scott, thank you for joining me to discuss scam compounds.
Yeah, it was a really good time. Great to work with you. I'll have to see you again over a couple of cigars. Sorry you missed it last time.
Yep. Should be there next time.